What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade. Basketball analysis coming to y'all with a top 8 prediction. This is something that the people been asking for, the people been wanting, and I finally got time to give it to y'all because the trade deadline is over, and now we can predict who's going to be the top 8 seeds in the Western Conference. And I'm going to start from the bottom all the way to who I think will finish number one at the end of the season. Right now, you have the Timberwolves, Rockets, Thunders, and Pelicans right now missing out on the playoffs in the Western Conference. I don't see that changing as the season ends. I think all those teams have different agendas. Some are rebuilding, some are tanking, and some are just trying to figure out what pieces work and don't work and what they're going to use for the future or what they're going to trade to cash in to get a player when they become available. The Sacramento Kings have been competitive, but they just don't have enough. They think that DeLon Wright can add a little bit more punch than Corey Joseph, but I still think having as bad as a defense as they have and not really having great offensive players either, I think eventually if nobody gets injured, they're just going to be eliminated too. And I think that they really won't do much and they just need another piece if they really want to be more competitive. And they just don't have that right now, and they could not get that in the trade deadline. Now, obviously, you have 10 teams available right now, and I look at the Warriors, Grizzlies, and Spurs. Something got to give. One of these teams have to get in if the Kings, Pelicans, Thunder, Rockets, and the Wolves don't. And I'm going to have to go with Stephen Curry and the Warriors, which I did think that they will be pretty bad because I'm not a big Wiggins believer right now. And I'm also not a big Kelly Oubre person, especially since he came off a major injury. And Draymond Green has never been known for being a dominant offensive player. And James Wiseman is a guy that they're still trying to find his way and find his footing and try to find a way to get the best out of him. With all those minor pieces and Steph Curry having to play a lot of games and be dominant in those games, I think the Warriors can get themselves in a play-in spot or eventually get that A spot with 1 or 2 games above 500, and that might be enough to lock it up. As the Grizzlies have been pretty inconsistent, winning and losing, or not being able to win enough games to stay in a playoff spot, but also not having Jaren Jackson Jr., which was a huge part of their success last year, and they haven't really been able to get back over that hump since he's been down, which is unfortunate because he is a big pillar and a building block of the future. And it's sad that he missed so many games this year without really being able to develop and play because he's been rehabbing. But I do think the Spurs fall out. Obviously, they just lost 4 in a row and they just lost Aldridge. I think that they still have a lot of young guys and a lot of hope in the future as they have been pretty competitive and they also have been very interesting, but they still are a team that is not really great offensively, not great defensively either. And I don't think that's going to be sustainable for the next 2 months for them to be able to lock up a spot. They're going to still be in the running because they got off to a decent start. But I think eventually they'll come back to earth and the Warriors go on a 3-4 game win streak and lock up a playoff spot. I obviously have the Mavericks making the playoffs all season, even when they had got off to a decent to mediocre start, depending on what month you talk about. They have been able to figure it out. Porzingis looks amazing, being able to hit the threes, being able to help stretch the floor for Luka to do his probing and his scoring inside with the floaters. And Luka is one of the best players in the league, and he's basically unstoppable when this three ball and mid range is going. And I think that that should be enough if they can stay healthy as a duo to at least lock them up a top 8 spot in the Western Conference. I don't see the Mavericks moving up even though they're not that far. I do see them finishing around where they at because I can see them staying stable around 500 for the rest of the season or a little bit better if they can stay healthy. And if that's the case, they can stay in that 7th spot. The Warriors are in a tough situation where they haven't been winning enough games and they also haven't been able to win at a big level even when healthy. So I don't really lock them into a higher spot than 8th, even though they have one of the top 10 players in the world on their team. They just don't have the space and they just don't have the IQ and they just not a great defensive team either. And I just don't see that being enough to be in the top 7. Portland, I can definitely see them moving up, but the problem is they have Denver, Lakers, Clippers, Suns, and Jazz above them. I love what I've been seeing out of CJ all season, besides his little skid coming back. Dame has been an MVP candidate for basically the majority of this year, being virtually unstoppable, closing games that they have to win, still in games when they shouldn't win, and that's what you want to see. But this team is not a great defensive team, and they're going all offense as their strong suit, and I don't think that that's going to be enough for them to move up past 6. The Nuggets are a team that's interesting. They can definitely move up depending on how long LeBron and AD are out, and they still projected to miss massive amount of games still, and it's going to be tough for them to make that up. So it is interesting to see if Aaron Gordon can come in and fit well with Jokic and Murray and Porter and help them get over the hump and become a legitimate contender in the Western Conference instead of a team that we all respect and we know that they can play. But that's difference between being a respectable team and actually being able to win a title. And with the acquisitions and change-ups and shake-ups that they have made throughout free agency and now through the trade deadline, I do think the Nuggets will move up to 4th, and I do have the Lakers going down to 5th because I don't see them being able to win a lot of games if LeBron and AD is not at their tip-top shape in the toughest conference in the league. Plus, they haven't been able to really win that much either, as they have already lost 4 in a row, and it's no sign of what kind of AD they're going to get, and it's no sign when LeBron is actually going to come back, which means Denver can make up that ground and actually probably stay in that position as they have finished top 4 for the last 2 years or higher. And I can see that happening again as they have gotten to me a little bit better and they have been able to remain healthy for majority of the season. And with the Lakers being 5th and the Nuggets being 4th, I do have the Clippers hanging on to 3. They haven't been able to be dominant on the defensive end, and they also haven't really been what I thought they would be. They have looked like one of the best teams in the Western Conference, but they haven't looked like that overwhelming force that we thought they was last year, and they ultimately wasn't when we got to the bubble. Now they have finally got Paul George playing at a high level and Kawhi Leonard rounding back out to shape, but they still haven't looked like this team that's going to dominate. And with the acquisition of Rondo, hopefully they can add some chinks in their armor and patch them up and have a ball handler that can make the job easier on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George so they don't have to do as much setting up and while trying to defend while also trying to score a bunch of points so that they can win. And when Rondo is motivated, he can be a significant difference maker as we have seen with the Lakers in the finals and also in the playoffs, but he also has been pretty mediocre to bad in a regular season. Maybe going to the Clippers motivates him. Maybe he has something to prove. Maybe he want to show that he didn't need the Lakers and he can win with the Clippers. We just seen that with Montrezl Harrell. It hasn't worked out too well for him with the Lakers so far. Maybe we get playoff Rondo early, and that probably helps the Clippers lock up 3rd because I don't see them passing the Phoenix Suns, who I still have been high on all year and before the season started. But honestly and truthfully, I did not see the Suns being 2nd in the Western Conference. They have really stayed healthy. Willie have played well consistently throughout the whole year. They have every position locked with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, obviously Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, and they have the ability to add another guy on their bench if they choose to through the buyout to make them a little bit deeper. I feel like they already have one of the best rosters. They have 2 of the best closers in Devin Booker and Chris Paul. Only reason why I say that because they can pass, plus hit shots from all over the court. Plus, on top of that, they're very patient and smart with the shots they take, and they're highly efficient in that regard. And I think that that's going to make them a tough team to beat, in which we have seen this year as they only lost 14 times and haven't really had that much trouble this year outside of Devin Booker missing a couple games. So the Suns have shown they are a great team, and the Suns have shown that they are one of the best teams in the West all year. And I don't think that that's going to change unless a major injury happens that we don't know about. So I do see them locking up the number 2 seed, as the Clippers are going to rest, the Lakers are going to rest, and the Nuggets, I just don't know what they're going to be. And they still have to fit in new pieces and see how they work together. I don't think that those teams can make up the ground that the Suns have. Plus, I don't see the Suns losing that many games anyway, unless an injury happens. So, with that being said, I do think the Suns stay at second. I think the only reason why I have the Jazz finishing first is just because they have such a huge lead that they don't really have to do much, but win 3, 4, 5 games in a row every once in a while, and they probably still can lock up the number 1 seed by the time the playoffs start. I didn't think they would be this good. I didn't think they would play this well, but I don't think it's a fluke. And I don't think that is fake. I do think that this team can lock up the number 1 seed, especially because they already on a 3 game winning streak as this video is recording. And I don't really see them messing up enough with this 3 game lead over the Suns to the point where they go on a 6, 7, 8 game losing streak and then they drop all the way down. And that's really the only way that they can fall from number 1 to 2 to 3 or 4 is that they have to have a collapse, and they haven't shown that all year. And Utah, even over the years, have shown us to be a great team in the Western Conference and always finishing within the top 6. And if they can get off to this start, I don't see why that would change. And I think their offense is real. And I do think they have the Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert. And they do have an all-star in Donovan Mitchell to help him out. And that doesn't even count the fact that Mike Conley is also an all-star technically because he was a reserve. So they have enough firepower. They're still healthy. They're playing together. And I don't really see too many hiccups for them to cost them to drop out number 1. Would I have picked Phoenix and Utah to be number 1 and number 2 when the season started? No. But as the season has played out, this has been 1 and 2 for majority of the year. Even in the beginning, the Phoenix Suns was number 1 and number 2 for a couple weeks until Devin Booker went down for a couple weeks. So I think that this could be the stand-ins as we go into the playoffs. Obviously, the play-in can change as teams can get hot while the season is ending and move up while the play-ins are happening. But other than that, the teams that have been the best in the West has been pretty consistent for the last couple years. And I don't think that too much will change now that the trade deadline is over. No team can get significantly worse unless an injury happens, and no teams can get significantly better unless a trade happens, which is not going to happen now because the deadline is over. Obviously, the buyouts will help as teams will, like the Spurs, will get worse, while other teams like the Lakers and other teams will get better, with those teams adding great veterans that can bolster their bench and give them a little stylistic changes in lineups and things that they can do. But I don't think it's too many significant buyouts right now outside of Drummond and LaMarcus, and those teams with the Lakers mainly needing AD and Anthony Davis and LeBron to stay healthy to be dominant. I don't really think that's going to change much for them until they get back. And also teams like where LaMarcus Aldridge will go, I don't really see him being a difference maker of significancy, as he is limited offensively and not a great defender, but he can be great in a specific role, and he can score in isolation and can pass a little bit for his position. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Quinn Wade, basketball analysis, signing out. And I'll be back with another video tomorrow, and it will be about the Eastern Conference and their player predictions. So other than that, hopefully you guys enjoy y'all weekend, and I'll see y'all Saturday.